You speak to about 50,000 people a year, which means you must be speaking almost every weekend.
Well,
I'm sure you must be.
we're doing a concert in Detroit coming up this weekend, and yeah, we're out and about.
Yeah. How often does someone come up to you after hearing you speak and say, Doctor, how do I respect my husband? He's continually drunk and he's always abusing me.
Yes, well, my dad attempted to strangle my mother to death. And after my dad died, I told my mom, and she was horrified because she said, "You were too little to know that. How could you remember that?" I was vivid. I said, "He had you up against the refrigerator. He was choking you. Your face was red. I could tell you couldn't breathe. I went at him. He knocked me down, and the scene ends. I see you then outside crying." And then at age 11, I saw my sister and mother talking, and there was a serious conversation. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they told me that my dad was having an affair, committing adultery. So I understand. I'm a wounded healer. I have wounds because of those experiences. But when we talk about respect, we're not talking about respecting drunkenness. We're not talking about respecting my dad's behavior of attempting to strangle my mother to death. We're not talking about respecting his committing adultery. We're talking about how do you get through to a person when you need to confront them? How do we communicate truth? How do we do that? And so the real challenge for us is to realize we cannot come across on a consistent basis as contemptuous, hostile people and affect the person's heart. It won't work. And in fact, God is saying, regardless of what they do, I call you as a woman to be a woman of dignity. Don't let that man, don't conclude that he's causing you to be a woman of contempt because of what he did. My mother did not become a woman of contempt. She divorced my dad, but then they remarried each other, and then he still had rage issues, so they separated for 5 years. But my mother was instrumental in bringing my dad to Jesus Christ. And she did not see him as a Judas. She saw him as a Peter. And there is that treacherous moment in both of their lives, but the spirit of a Peter is totally different. And my mom was key to my dad opening his heart to Jesus Christ. And that's where Peter says, if your husband's disobedient to the word, you can win him through that respectful behavior. But this is really a complicated issue in our culture because the idea of putting on respect towards someone who has done this kind of thing doesn't seem reasonable. But as we then go one step farther, it doesn't seem reasonable to show a person hostility and contempt either.
You know, the fact that your parents divorced and then remarried affirms a point you make in your books, that even though a couple may be on this crazy cycle that you, I think, have appropriately coined,
Yes.
They still have a deep, abiding love for each other, and they're in their separate rooms wondering, how did it come to this?
Exactly.
Like you mentioned the story of the guy who thoughtlessly brings home a birthday card for his wife's 10th anniversary. How stupid is that?
Yes.
But
yes,
he does
yes.
it, and he loves her, she loves him, and they're opposite ends of the house,
Yes.
basically sitting in the dark and moping and saying, how did it come to this?
Yes.
I love her.
Yes.
I love him.
That's exactly right. It's a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding.
Yeah. Are your parents still alive?
No, they are not.
Did they reflect on their tumultuous life together, later on?
Yes.
And did they ever do it with you and talk to you about it?
Mm-hmm. My dad and I had some deep conversations about some of those events. But they both came to Christ and my freshman year at Wheaton College, and God really got a hold of them. You know, it was like faith flipped a switch, bringing light and power into their hearts. And I had just been a believer 2 years before that. So Mom was watching me, and then she joined a Bible study, and then Dad was watching Mom, and he opened his heart to Christ after she did.
How did their marriage dramas impact your view of marriage as a young man?
Oh, huge, because as women came into me, I would have her do this loving thing, because I saw her kind of as my mom, and then I'd have her do this loving thing. But she was already doing these loving things, and that's when the Lord spoke to me in that inaudible way. You're a Bible teacher. I studied the Bible 30 hours a week for nearly 20 years, and the Lord said, you have not asked what my word says about how to motivate a man to be more loving. And that's when I turned to the Scriptures and began to look at everything the Bible said about marriage, and I realized Peter and Paul were saying something here that had been removed from the marital radar screen. And then I was a little apprehensive of trying to tell a woman to put on respect toward this man who was failing to be what she wanted him to be. But the results began to blow me away, Jim. It became unbelievable how I saw men begin to soften and move toward the wife to connect. In fact, I have women do what I call the respect test just to see this. And I say, if he's in the house sitting there alone reading the paper, come into him and say, I was thinking about you today, all the things about you I respect, and I want you to know I really respect you. Then turn and walk out. and he'll follow you. Or he'll, if he's lazy, he'll call you back. Hey, what is it? What is it?
What's up? What do you want?
We talk about the fact that men hear their mother tongue, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge, and we encourage women to do that. But make sure you are authentic, because he's going to ask you what you were thinking, and to make sure that what you say is genuine. But do it and watch what happens. Mind-boggling, just mind-boggling.
What about the female need for respect? It's lesser than that of the guy, but a woman wants to be respected too.
Oh, hugely. Right? That's why we say we all need love and respect equally. And Peter says that we're to honor our wife as a fellow heir of the grace of life. And we unpack what love is to a woman. We went through all the scriptures. Now, if a woman really wanted R-E-S-P-E-C-T, in fact, we think Aretha Franklin wrote that song, but it was actually Otis Redding in 1965. And the one song we had as men, he was singing it to his wife. The one song we had, they took.
Yeah, there you go.
But we point out the fact that you have to show respect to all human beings. And a component of love is esteeming your wife. And she will, in fact, respond at times, you're not respecting me. But one of the points we make is if you show disrespect to a woman week after week that you love, she'll say, how can you say you love me and treat me disrespectfully? But what's interesting, show disrespect to a man week after week, and you'll say, everybody respects me but you. I don't deserve this disrespect. And it's interesting how we land during conflict in these two arenas, her on love, him on respect.
You've been in this ministry how long now?
1999 we launched.
So it's 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
Have things changed since the launch in terms of the marriage dynamics out there, or are they pretty much the same?
That's a good question. I would say in some ways, with the economy, divorce is decreasing a little bit because people can't afford to get a divorce. Right. So there are factors that are perhaps preventing that. But I think there is a real confusion in our culture about what makes for intimacy, and I think this is why this book has taken off. Men in particular, I've always said men are not indifferent to marriage, but the culture of intimacy has become a pink culture. It's not a blue culture. And men, though, once they hear their mother tongue, like the respect test, they move toward the wife. The wife wants to connect. That's a huge value to her. But her husband becomes this mysterious island that she's forever paddling around, but he doesn't permit her to land. And it's through this respect talk that isn't demeaning to her, does not cause her to lose a sense of self, it doesn't cause her to lose power, actually will open up the spirit of the man. And this novelty is what we see bringing tremendous healing to a lot of relationships. So we see very positive and significant change over these last 10 years. We've surveyed 25,000 people, and we see tremendous changes that we're documenting. So I'm very confident, very optimistic about this message.
On the next 100 Hunter Street, we're going to continue this discussion with Dr. Emerson Eggerich. The new book is called The Love and Respect Experience, a husband-friendly devotional that wives truly love. I know you can hardly wait. Back with more after this.